There's a civil war brewing amongst celebrities in Hollywood. Rainn Wilson, formerly known as Dwight from The Office, he says they should be able to say anything they want. Ricky Gervais has a different thought, and now he's claiming he'll never shut up about the censorship of celebrities and how badly the spoken word of those absurd movie stars might be destroying the industry. Folks, welcome back yet again. Happy day, and thank you for coming our way. An attitude of gratitude as ever, every time you join us to endeavor explaining entertainment. Folks, it's time. Click that like button, share, subscribe, and click it, stick it to the algorithms. It is the notification bell. It was not so long ago that Office star Rainn Wilson was unhappy with Ricky Gervais. Now, we played this on the channel, and we had Christian on. We didn't have Michelle. I'm looking forward to having Michelle's thoughts on this today. But I'll give a quick refresher for those who were not here. It says the Office star Rainn Wilson has launched an expletive-filled rant attacking Ricky Gervais for telling actors to keep out of politics. During an appearance on the Soul Boom podcast, Wilson slammed Gervais over his infamous Golden Globes monologue, which, folks, we would love to play for you, but we would get hit with a copyright, and well, then it makes us go away, and that's not okay. It says despite the monologue taking place 6 years ago, Wilson, that's Dwight, returned and slammed Gervais and defended actors' right to free speech. Quote, "One of the things that teased me off to no end is Ricky Gervais saying, just take your actor award. No one wants to hear what you have to say. It's like blank you," Wilson said. And he went on to say, everybody has a right to say whatever they want to say, yada, yada, yada. We've done that discussion, but now Ricky Gervais has responded. Out of thatparkplace.com by Trevor Denning says, Ricky Gervais doesn't care if you're offended. Comedian rejects calls to tone his humor down. So what does he say? Well, it says, during a recent appearance on BBC Radio 2, Ricky Gervais made it clear that he has no intention of toning down his comedy. In fact, he argued that comedians cannot express an interesting opinion without eventually upsetting someone. Quote, "I don't tell people not to be offended. I tell them I don't care if they are. Be offended if you want. It makes it funnier for me." He says, it's a myth that I go out to offend. I never go out to offend. I just know that it's probably going to happen. He accepts that people have different beliefs, experiences, sensitivities. As a result, offense is nearly unavoidable whenever a comedian tackles politics, religion, gender identity, celebrities, or other contentious subjects. He says, quote, "There's nothing you can say, particularly anything that's mildly interesting or contentious, or your viewpoint that someone somewhere won't find offensive." He goes on to say, "Now I go, yeah, I know you are. Everyone is," in reference to people saying I'm offended. Finally, he says in regards to free speech and cancel culture, quote, "I've dealt with it too much, actually. I think the last couple of tours, I have dealt with cancel culture and free speech because I felt I had to. Now I don't have to anymore." All right, now he doesn't directly respond to Rainn Wilson, but it's based on questions about this, and he's responding broadly to that without picking a fight directly. Kristen, I want to go to you first. We talked about this in the past about celebrities using their platforms, like a Mark Ruffalo and a Meryl Streep, to really drive home their political or ideological views. And we've talked about you're free to do so, but there is a market consequence to that once you step into an area where audiences feel like you dislike them, right? People are less likely to go transact with you if they think that you actively hate them. So what do you make of this little brouhaha we've got between Rainn Wilson and Ricky Gervais now?
I guess to reiterate what I said last week, I think it's a time and place thing as well. I think people are just frustrated. If you're in an awards show ceremony, picking up your Oscar for being a great actor, and all of a sudden you're talking about the rainforest, I think that just rubs people the wrong way. I think Ricky has been right about almost everything, and I appreciate his candor. And I also think he said all the things he did, and he kind of attacked the issue directly because it was a significant problem in the culture. But I think that problem is fading. I also think it's just a sign of the times that people just get offended by everything. It's just ridiculous. And, we'll get into the Odyssey conversation, I imagine, soon, but we can have different opinions on that. Who cares? I listened to Matt Walsh, and he had some things that I thought were interesting and thoughtful, and things that I didn't really wrap my brain around when it came to that movie. I'm not offended by that. I think it makes me smarter if I kind of listen to what he has to say and maybe tweak my points of view, or I kind of defend myself. So it's just a weird place we're in it right now culturally. I think Rainn Wilson read it the wrong way, but I think Gervais has been sort of, on point forever on this issue. It's a comedian's job to be outrageous. If you want to be offended, God bless you, but who cares?
Okay, so let's talk about that, though, because I think this is an important point. Tell me what you think about this idea. The idea that at least for actors whose job it is to reach the broadest possible spectrum of the market, right? The TAM. If you're a big brand actor, so you're a Tom Holland, you're Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet, we can go through the list, right? You know, there's a lot of them.
Let's point out The Rock, because he has history with this, right?
You're welcome. Okay, so but these big brands, I mean, because they're essentially businesses in human form, right? And with ecosystems of finance around them. Their job, it seems to me, is to be as broadly appealing as they can be. And that means probably not. Like, this is the sacrifice you make to be that sort of an actor. You don't have to be that kind of an actor. You can be a niche. But if you're going to be the biggest out there, then you have to make the sacrifice of saying, my job is to be as appealing as possible to everybody. Okay. Conversely, Christian, and this is where I think Ricky Gervais is taking some unfair criticism, perhaps, I actually think that comedians have to be a little bit offensive. Like, I think that's part of comedy is your job is to acknowledge the things that are an oddity. And to notice oddities means you're noticing things that some people don't want you to verbally out loud notice and then expose that. So I actually think that we've got two very different systems here. One that says, hey, you're a big actor. You're trying to make a lot of money. You're trying to make a lot of money for a lot of people. Be as appealing, as kind, as courteous as you can be. And on the comedian side, it's your job to say outlandish, outrageous things that are it's the sacred cow. How dare you do so? But you do so anyway because you're the jester. What do you think about that juxtaposition?
Yeah, and I agree. And on the comedian front, listen, even like a Nate Bargatze, who's as clean and inoffensive and milquetoast as possible, and he's very funny. You could say, well, he's always picking on dads. He's just this helpless dad and his wife's always right. And he's, pushing stereotypes about, I mean, you could dig through any comedy routine. Wait, what about mothers-in-law? I think they're good, kind people. We shouldn't trash them. So I think we can kind of go deep into basically find offense about everything. But yeah, I mean, comedy works partly by surprise. And if you're saying something as a joke that people are thinking, but they're afraid to say it, then that's funny and that's interesting. That's provocative. So yeah, it's just, I mean, listen, I literally wrote the book on woke Hollywood. I'm so happy that a lot of this is fading, but it's not going to go away completely. And it's just ridiculous. It really is. And I do wish more of the artists themselves, especially the big timers, the A-listers, they should have been really standing up. The Tom Hankses, the George Clooney's, the Julia Roberts, they should have been really defending speech for years, and they haven't been, which is a big bugaboo of mine. I mean, like, where were you?
Right.
So Jimmy Kimmel getting canceled because he lied on air and misled his viewers. Well, we could have that debate, but where were you? So,
right. Well, Michelle, a lot of those names that were just listed, like Tom Hanks, they became very political, and they worked for companies that became very political. I mean, Disney has become this entity that is largely associated now with the Democrat Party. We're not political here. We talk about it when we need to. But, like in California, Disney just received tens of millions of dollars from this tax credit for films. And it went to them to make a Pixar movie that they're going to make one way or the other. Like, it will have no effect on whether they make the movie. The state of California just said, oh, we like you. We like you because you do what we want you to do. Here's, $14 million for Hexed. And so I think that's partly what has caused one of the problems is this unification of politics in Hollywood resulted in people self-censoring or saying things that were not in favor of their brand or the market or their studios because now they were working on something different, something that was esoterically higher than themselves. It was the cause du jour of Politico. What say you, Michelle? Muted right now, Michelle, but we hope no longer.
I muted myself again.
she's speechless.
Yes, I am speechless. What exactly are you asking me, though?
So in regards to Hollywood, do you think that they put politics for a period of time, and maybe that's diminishing now, or maybe it's not, and you can weigh in on that as well. Do you think they put politics above their own financial benefit?
Well, they definitely have at times. It's more the rare case of finding certain individuals, whether it's like a Zach Cregers, who of course had Barbarians and Weapons and now has a Resident Evil movie coming out. He seems to just want to do his own thing. My point is there's individuals who seem to just want to make their own stuff, but the corporations as a whole, yes, they absolutely full steam ahead when it came to politics, and I think they've seen that that's not a wise move. But I don't think Disney seems to be changing course at all. It'll be interesting to see what happens with the Paramount WB merger, and of course, who's in charge of that. And hopefully, they just get back to making entertainment instead of propaganda.
Yeah, let me bounce that to Christian. Christian, what are your thoughts on this deal where in America, the federal government has already approved the buyout of Warner Brothers Discovery by Paramount Skydance, which will be, by the way, a company that rivals Disney in size. And even the EU approved it yesterday, even the EU. And yet the state of California is trying to block it. And I believe there is no possibility of that happening. It's just literally them harming themselves by doing so.
Et tu EU. Yeah, this is all political. They perceive the Ellison family as being pro-Trump, and they can't have that. They fear that CNN will become maybe more mainstream and less radical. So there's a lot of cultural politics at play. It also, like you said, even if it can't be stopped, it's like a temper tantrum. Mm-hmm. We want to go on record saying we don't approve of that. So we'll have to wait and see. One quick note: one of the things I used to get a lot of access to were actors, and when I lived in DC, I'd get a lot of interviews, and I always want to ask them tough questions, tough but fair questions. I got Jack Black to talk on the record a few years ago here in Denver, and I asked him at that point he was really pushing the Iran deal for President Obama. Hold on
a second, Christian.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I follow this stuff, and I did not know there was a time when Jack Black was promoting the Iran deal. And I'm sorry, those things, when you put them together, they just struck me that I had to have a pause just to acknowledge what we're talking about is Jack Black. Not, okay, we'll go there. Jack Black, School of Rock, Iran deal. Yeah. Go.
That's the new normal, man. It's a crazed bedfellows.
Okay, go. What did he say?
Well, he was very affable. And then, I usually wait for the kind of mid to late conversation before I drop the bomb on tougher questions. I said, you took a position. A lot of people will not like the position. You're dealing in an industry where if they don't like the position, they don't go see your movies. What are your thoughts on that? And he said that, he and his agent or he and his rep or he and his someone talked about it. And Jack Black just shrugged. They said, let the chips fall where they may. Now, this was when Jack Black was going through a pretty hot streak, a big name. And, I think he's kind of waxed and waned over the years. But I think it's partly they're insulated by money. I think it's partly I want to do what I want to do. I think it's partly emotional. But, some actors will be at the top and think they can do no wrong. And then a couple of years later, they're struggling for work. So it just seems short-sighted to me. But, listen, Jack Black handled the question, fairly and took it on, and I appreciate that. And, but nobody challenges these actors about their positions and nobody questions them. And I didn't have enough time to kind of debate them on the issues. And that's not really my point. But yeah, I mean, this hurts. And listen, if you're in the Odyssey and you're Zendaya and you say something outrageous, it doesn't matter because this is a runaway train. But if you're in a project that's on the bubble and people aren't quite sure about it, and all of a sudden it's got De Niro and Mark Ruffalo in the cast, it's going to have an impact. And they don't get that.
Yes.
Jonas, I go to you for a final word on this. When it comes to Hollywood, we've seen the swings. They were all aboard the Harvey Express until suddenly everybody knew what everybody there already knew. And then he was no longer a god, and he was, put him in jail. And they scrambled to come up with, we're the moral arbiters, and we've come up with this code, and you all will go along with it now because you're the rubes, and et cetera, et cetera. I just think that there's a credibility crisis when it comes to Hollywood celebrities speaking out on a lot of issues. I don't think that they're seen by the public as understanding. And so if I were them and if I were their agents, I would say, I don't think that I don't think that there's efficacy in you speaking on some of these things. Like, I actually think it has a negative effect on this.
Right. When we were all focused on the amazing talent of all of the actors, as opposed to these are the approved people doing the approved thing, saying the approved message, when we didn't have corporate accounts changing their logos once a year or maybe more than once a year in order to weigh in all of this. The problem is it seems very fake. There's some people that I think Ruffalo, I don't think he's being paid to say the things that he says. I think maybe there's some people who line up to hand him money for saying the things he would already be saying. So in some ways, it doesn't actually bother me when Ruffalo says something I don't agree with him on. But when they get up there and they say something that's like, wow, how brave of you to say that you have some problems with the way that Donald Trump speaks. That's such a nuanced take, and I've never heard that before out of Hollywood. It just serves as a reminder to the audience, which some portion of that audience is going to disagree with that statement, that, by the way, I need to make sure you know, we don't like you. There was a line in Sonic the Hedgehog 2 where Jim Carrey stuck it in there and says, I hear there were good people on both sides. It's just one of those things where it feels like they all hate you and they accept that they have to do business with you to make money, but they want to laugh at you a little bit while they're doing it. So that's the part that is so insufferable. Here, get your award, and kindly leave the stage.
Well, here's the thing, though. You're talking about they like to laugh at the average person. The response that I had, which was, I had no idea Christian was going to tell the story about Jack Black and the Iran deal. My reaction was authentic. I had to stop it because I just blew my mind. Because if somebody came to me from DC and said, Pro, we need you for whatever reason. We need you to endorse, some sort of national defense scheme we've come up with, or some sort of geopolitical concept we've got. We need you to endorse this on your show. Let's say, like, guys, I think I'm a smart guy. I've got my opinions. I'll talk, boldly sometimes behind the scenes, but I'm not qualified for that. I'm not going to do that. And it's amazing to me that a celebrity, who's famous for being the lead singer of Tenacious D and, the voice of Bowser would be like, oh yeah, I totally know enough. And I totally should hang my brand on the idea of whether or not we ship, suitcases of money in an airplane to Iran. It's like, it's just amazing to me that people would think that that's a great idea. But, everybody's got to make their decisions on that.
Well, it's about the same time that I would ask Gore Vidal about his thoughts on Vidal Sassoon hair products.
Michelle?
Well, I was just going to say, back to where this conversation began, of what's his name? I just blanked.
Ricky Gervais, Rainn Wilson.
Rainn Wilson. It's like Rainn Wilson has a point. Sure, they can say what they want to say, but in this landscape, it may turn off a big portion of the audience. Like, yes, you're allowed to say it, but is it wise for you to say it is the question. And then secondly, I don't feel the point he was trying to make was best made by bringing up Gervais, because Gervais, that was a very specific thing. He was speaking for all of us that watched these things that night. That's why it worked, and that's why people still love it. But secondly, that is at a very specific place where no one wants to hear your politics. If they want to tweet something out on their own personal time when they're not working for out on a when they're not out promoting their movie, so be it. Again, that may turn people off, it may not. But there is a big difference between that and getting up there and holding basically the audience captive to promote your politics when we are there simply to see what movies won or did not win the Oscar.
Okay. So I had thought the conversation was coming to an end, but Michelle, you've brought up something now. I got to ask this to the panel at large. Okay. So I actually think there's more nuance to this. I think that different celebrities have different abilities to reach audiences because there are various levels of earned credibility. So, and I actually think this works out, like, it's not just celebrities, but let's say that you go to somebody and they offer you medical advice and they're in terrible health and they're not a doctor and they've never had a single class in college on anatomy or anything, right? They may want to be a doctor, but you don't accept them as a doctor. I think the same is true of celebrities. Like, I think a Gary Sinise, for example, can speak to us about military issues and we'll listen. I think he can take the stage anywhere and talk about veterans and we'll listen. And we consider him a credible source. Why? Because he's earned the acceptance of the audience as a credible source. Whereas, like, if a Mark Ruffalo gets up and talks about military service, we all go, oh, come on, dude, not again. And that, I think, also has a part to play in this. I think you can get up at an award ceremony and make some sort of statement. But if you come across as a doofus who has no connection with average people, the average people say, what are we doing? Why are we listening to this again? Turn it to something else. And that's what Ricky Gervais is talking about. Mm-hmm. Panel, final thoughts on that before we go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm friends, maybe too loose a word, but I check in with John Ondrasik. He's the singer from Five for Fighting. And I always use him as my example in this regard. John is very smart, he's very thoughtful, he's a kind person, and he's been weighing in more and more on politics in recent years. But if you watch what he says, it's thoughtful. He's given it some, some time to kind of marinate. He's not vicious, he's not vile, he's not attacking his enemies. I mean, I think if more celebrities would take that approach, actually know the material, give it some consideration, and not be so bombastic, we wouldn't recoil when a Leonardo DiCaprio goes on stage after spending the weekend in his yacht and saying, down with climate change. So it's the combination of, why should we trust you on this issue? Why are you so bombastic? Hey, man, you're just repeating what MS Now said 5 minutes ago. So I think it's all those things.
That's exactly right. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you tell us what you think in the comments, in the chat. Who has earned it as celebrities? We'd love to hear from you. Like, what celebrity has earned their place in a certain field of expertise where you're like, you know what? When this celeb speaks to me, when this movie star speaks to me about this certain thing, all ears are open because they've earned that place in my acceptance of their expertise. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for checking out the video today. It's such a pleasure every time we get to endeavor together, explaining entertainment and keeping you ahead of the culture curve. If you would be so kind, folks, swerve on down to that like button wherever you may find it and click it, please. It helps us. And you are the gigawatts that send us far and wide across the fruited plains of YouTube. Until the next time, keep learning, keep growing, and as always, keep having fun.